Okay, everybody. Well, welcome this evening. With daylight savings time over, it's dark outside, so even though it's not quite evening, we'll go ahead and say it's evening. Appreciate everyone joining us for this public engagement meeting for our green infrastructure in Mill Creek Park. My name is Matt Bond. I'm the Deputy Director for KC Water, responsible for engineering and compliance. And in a minute, I'll give an overview of the KC Water utilities and the overflow control program and why that's such an important foundation for this project. But then we'll get to the really interesting stuff, some of the transformational ideas that we have with a project to put in green infrastructure in Mill Creek Park. We'll both provide some good stormwater control, stormwater management, but also some amenities, as we will talk about. So I've got several people to help me. Thanks to Taylor and Alex from Parson Associates, part of the design professional team. Brian Hess, our Smart Sewer Division Officer, will give a project overview. And then we'll have three of the principal design team members from HDR, the prime firm on this, Jess Adams Weber, Robbie Bryant, and Eric Dove, talk through some of the project details, and then got an exciting way to engage you and get some of your ideas and input on the project. So with that, I'd like to just give an overview of KC Water. So KC Water actually functions as a department of Kansas City, Missouri government, and we have three separate utilities, different rate structures for all three. Drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. And this project flows through the wastewater utility. Next slide, we have the sewer system throughout the 325 square mile Kansas City area. In the heart of the city, from downtown down to about 85th Street, of course, Mill Creek Park is in that area. We have our combined sewer system, so our forefathers set up the system so that both the stormwater from the streets and the wastewater from the homes and businesses are combined. It works well when the weather is dry. During wet weather, though, diluted, combined stormwater and wastewater is discharged in what are called overflows in that area, about 58 square miles in the heart of the city. And then to the north and then further south, we do have a separate sewer system with separate stormwater and wastewater systems.
Did we lose Matt? I can't tell if he got knocked off. Taylor?
I think we might have froze. So if you want to take over this slide.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'll try and pick up where Matt left off until he's able to join us again. Hi, I'm Brian Hess. I'm the Smart Sewer Division Head with KC Water, and I'll just try and pick up here. So Matt was describing our combined sewer system in the project areas that make up some of our older downtown areas. We have what we would call sewer overflows during wet weather, and basically that's a combination of our aging system. These things can provide sewer backups that oh, Matt, are you able to join us again? Got kicked out. You're on mute. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Internet kicked me out. So how far did you get, Brian?
I just basically just started on this slide, so you can go ahead and take over.
So obviously with that combined system, we have those sewer overflows with excess stormwater in the system during wet weather. Portions of the city obviously were built, throughout the late 19th century and then through the 20th century, and it's time to do some serious repair rehabilitation. Sewer backups into basements, water quality in local streams because of the overflows. And then the other thing is that we really didn't keep up with our sewer rates for the true cost of maintaining wastewater infrastructure. In the 70s and 80s with the Clean Water Act, the federal government paid for a lot of the sewer system, treatment plants and pump stations, and now we have to pay for all of those because that federal funding is gone. So next slide, our smart sewer program is what we're doing to try to minimize those overflows. And we have several tools in our toolkit to improve our system. Implementation of green infrastructure we'll talk about tonight. Sewer separation, where it makes sense to separate the stormwater pipes from the wastewater pipes. Capacity improvements to get the flows to our treatment plants, to remove in the separate sewer area inflow and infiltration that comes in through the separate sewers, additional wet weather treatment capacity where we need it, and then pump station and treatment plant improvements. The good news is in this last year, though, we did get a major consent decree, new modified consent decree, and significantly reduced the cost from over $4 billion to $2.3 billion. We made the case to the EPA and the Justice Department that our wastewater rates were getting too high from an affordability standpoint for our customers, and because of that, we have a more reasonable schedule over time. Still spending a lot of money to catch up, but less than it was before the consent decree. So with that modification. And then is that it? And so we'll be talking tonight about green infrastructure. And with that, we are, the main reason that the wastewater utility is involved is because of those combined sewer overflow reductions. At the bottom of the base there, that's where we are trying to look at cost-effective ways to get that stormwater out of the system. However, for a project like this, there's a great opportunity to look at different layers of improvements that other departments or other partners could bring in to provide betterments, street transportation enhancements, enhanced park amenities, and even some of the legacy flood mitigation efforts that we have in, past the flows from the Westport area and other parts down through Mill Creek Park. So we'll be talking about the types of improvements that the wastewater utility pays for, and then layering on some other potential community benefits. So with that, Brian, I'll let you go, and I appreciate you being there to pinch hit for me as my connection dropped out.
I didn't really do anything other than just introduce myself. So thank you, Matt.
All right.
Again, I'm Brian Hess. I'm a Smart Sewer Division Head with KC Water. My role is to help manage the consent decree projects and make sure that we are able to get those delivered on time and on budget. So we're here today to present our green infrastructure project that's in Mill Creek. And just to note that when we are talking about our project today, we'll be concentrating in our project area, which is the north half of Mill Creek Park, really. We do not look at any project elements or construction aspects down in the southern half where the fountain and such are. Next slide, please. So our agenda today we have shown here on the screen, but really we are wanting to provide an overview and describe what the purpose of our project is, discuss the timeline and where we are in that timeline, describe what stakeholder involvement we've had so far, and then there's an exercise that Matt talked about that will talk about some of our amenities and other pieces that we want to get your feedback on, and then next steps as well. Next slide, please. So the purpose of our project is to reduce combined sewer overflows at outfall 17, which is the discharge that we have currently down at Brush Creek. This is where the elements that mix with the sewer and the stormwater, when we get to an inundated system, that's where that point where overflow. And our objective is to try and reduce those overflows, decrease them as much as possible. We're capturing almost 49 acres of area, that stormwater that is north and east of the park, and treating it within the green infrastructure, capturing it there and treating it. This will help to minimize those overflows that we talked about at Brush Creek at that identified outfall. And then the project team will provide a more detail about what the project is and how we accomplish this a little bit later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So when we began this project, we, KC Water, established some critical success factors prior to selecting our consultant to work with us on this project, and that's to help drive the project success. Some of those include enhancing the park usage through creative design for the overflow control. We want to integrate landscape architecture and engineering principles. We want to create ultimately an amenity that the community will take pride in. And then as we're doing here today and that we've done, and we'll talk about a little bit more, we want to engage the stakeholders through our development on this design and then through construction as well. And then, as you know, there's lots of other projects that are happening around this area adjacent to the park, and we're trying to coordinate and manage how we interact with the other city projects and those stakeholders as well. Next slide, please. So our project kicked off with the design procurement, and we selected our design professional in August, or they began work really in June of this year. And we're currently in the preliminary design phase of the project, working towards getting to a bid of a project in the summer of 2022, and then construction that will start in the fall of 2022. The design elements that we'll be working through here this spring will really pull in those elements that we talk about with this engagement and other stakeholder input that we give back through the exercises that we're conducting in this process. Next slide, please. So as I said, our project kicked off with the design professional selection, but we have started in October with meeting some of the stakeholders, including the Mill Creek Park Association. And as, excuse me, as I talked about before, one of our critical success factors was being able to engage and talk with the stakeholders and the public about what this project involves. So thus far, we've met with Mill Creek Park Board. We had a second stakeholder meeting, and then we're having our public meeting today. And we want to get input and feedback from you on this project and process. With that, I think I'll turn it over now to Jess to give some additional information on the engagement that we've had thus far.
Thanks, Brian. So as Matt and Brian mentioned, my name is Jessica Adams Weber. I'm a member of the HDR team and a part of our leadership team here for HDR throughout Missouri and Kansas. I'm also a Southmoreland neighbor, so I live right adjacent to the project area. So it's very critical to me that we communicate what we're doing on this project. So as you see on your screen, and as Brian mentioned, our public and stakeholder engagement strategy was to engage targeted stakeholders, including the Mill Creek Park Association, expand that stakeholder list and host that meeting in November for that expanded list, then meet today with the public, and then come back to that expanded stakeholder list and express to them the findings that we've gathered through both Social Pinpoint and the survey that Taylor is going to walk through today. through those meetings that we've had with the focused stakeholders, it was to identify any additional stakeholders that we needed to include, make sure that our survey questions were refined for the public to make sure that we could gather the right amount of information, and then go through a prioritization exercise that we're going to present for you today on some potential project amenities. So Taylor, if you don't mind going to the next slide. So as part of that procurement for the design engineer on this project, we supported the city with some evaluation criteria. There were 9 specific designs that were provided from that design competition. And they went through an alternative screening process where we evaluated the functionality and safety of that design. So how does it function relative to the park users, the long-term performance to make sure that that green infrastructure is working appropriately, the biodiversity and sustainability that alternative presented, and different opportunities for education and user engagement, recreational opportunities, as well as the historical significance of that alternative. After we went through that screening process with KC Water, we came down to the alternative that you see on your screen, which is known as the tall grass prairie option. So we're going to walk through this alternative today, discuss some of those amenities that may be potentially included into this project, and get your feedback on what you want to see for your neighborhood park. Now, just to give you some context, and Brian hit this a little bit earlier, sometimes it helps to look at the map. Our project extends for this, it begins north at 43rd Street, so right there at the corner of where St. Luke's Hospital is, and runs all the way down to 45th. And as Brian mentioned, this does not take it all the way down to the fountain. This is actually really at the end of the St. Luke's boundary there at 45th Street. And from east to west, it's from Mill Creek Parkway over to American Century, or basically the east side of that park. So this is just to give you a little bit of context as you see our imagery moving forward. Now I'm going to bring on Robbie Bryant. Robbie Bryant is a landscape architect with HDR, and he's really brought the vision and the passion behind what our alternative at the tall grass prairie option provides. So Robbie, if you don't mind joining us and let us know how this concept came about.
All right, thank you, Jess. So I think mainly we were working off the critical success factors for the project: the education, recreation, safety, aesthetics, and most of all, making this green infrastructure enhancement to the park a public amenity. So that was the key. And so what we've come up with the tall grass prairie is to develop this green infrastructure component that's a high performance landscape that replicates the functions of natural systems. So the natural systems of a tall grass prairie basically can capture and treat stormwater and enhance it while making this a nice amenity within the park. So you see the layout on the left and some of the inspirational images on the right. Some of the key components that go into this design are allowing people to come in and walk around this native grass area, places to sit, places that we can program, which that'll be on a future slide. With these undulations, with the walkway that meanders around the prairie. So that's the inspiration for the project, and that's the kind of a glimpse of what the layout will look like.
So Eric Dove is our design engineer on this project, and he's going to present a little bit about what's happening underground with this design concept. Eric, do you mind joining us on screen?
So looking at this project from an engineering perspective, we're going to start moving the water from north to south through the facility. So if you look at the top right image, that's the plan view. You can see where Mill Creek Parkway is, and on the right hand side of the screen is 43rd. There will be a new separate storm sewer system installed in 43rd, and that will take clean stormwater into our project area. We're going to capture floatables, trash, and debris in a below ground vault. So when it emerges above the ground, we won't have all that trash and debris in it, and it'll be clean water that we're introducing into bioretention areas. On the bottom right, that is a cross section through our area. And we show the 24-inch inflow pipe that would be coming from 43rd. And what we've designed is a series of cascading step-down features that fit very well at the site and create that interesting amenity that Robbie showed on the prior slide. The vegetation in here is going to be native vegetation. On the inset photo on the left, you can see to scale how deep this root structure is. And the root structure can extend up to 4 feet deep, was absolutely amazing. And these native prairie grasses are really built towards improving our infiltration. So if you think of a typical filter, typical inert system, the filter eventually gets clogged and you have to replace it. But by relying on these native systems, this is self-regenerating. We'll be able to maintain that infiltration process, infiltration into our below ground network for a much longer time with much less need for maintenance. Once we get it underground, we're going to install a rock media that will filter and store and eventually infiltrate that water into our below ground system. This series of cascading bioretention areas then will move the water slowly to the south until we get to the end where all the water will be infiltrated. So we'll have a series of pipes coming in, but there really is no outflow from this system. This system is designed to take all the water and infiltrate it. While doing so, there's this incredible opportunity to create the amenities. And so let me go ahead and hand the slide over to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit more about the betterment. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Well, as Matt talked about previously, we have a base project here, which is ultimately we're moving to reduce our CSOs. And with that, the project base, which was shown to create that clean water, basically getting that out of our system and reducing those overflows. The project is a pretty large footprint, but what it allows for us to do is look at other potential options that would create a benefit within the community. And as Matt talked about, those additional layers that we have here with the different park amenities and the transportation and flood mitigation, those are all added benefits that we can take advantage of if we have additional funding opportunities. But in order to take those into consideration as we do our base project, we want to be able to take those into account and be able to plan for them and have the opportunities there as those come forward and to be able to plan for those in the future. So with that, I think I'll turn it back over and let the group talk more about what amenities we have to look for.
Robbie, do you mind walking us through what those potential project amenities are so we get an idea of what we might be providing feedback on later on Social Pinpoint?
Sure, thanks, Jess. So in addition to the base amenities within the park, which would be the walkways and some seating areas, there's some opportunities to do some more recreational or aesthetic features. And so these are the slide you're looking at shows a few of those. I'll just start in the upper left-hand corner with an overlook. When we evaluated the other, I guess, 8 concepts that were developed, we ran them through the scoring system, and there were certain components from each of those 8 amenities that really scored really well. And they weren't included in the Tallgrass Prairie, so we wanted to give the public the opportunity to take a look at some of those. So the first is this overlook. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner of this image, you'll see where there's an elevated overlook that could be added to this option, just like it was in one of the other options, which could be a really nice amenity for the park. And then as we work our way across to the right, Some other amenities that might highlight, the stormwater coming into the park. Maybe it's a runnel, maybe it's a channel that has a waterfall element. But this was the inspiration for this one. And then the water feature. This is an element which captures water in a plaza space, which we do have a large plaza space on the north end of the park. So we could daylight that water, let it work its way through a kind of an artistic water feature, such as what you're looking at. And then moving to the right, the healing garden with the proximity to the hospital, that might be a nice amenity for the park as well. Just another thing to look at. And the pollinator garden is another one. And then as we look at the bottom row, a few other elements, the children's garden, just opportunities for classrooms to assemble in the park. The curved boardwalk. So we do have curved walkways around the site, the tall grass prairie, but the curved boardwalk offers other options for that element. An outdoor classroom, and then a natural water feature or an architectural weir. One element we didn't highlight when talking about the tall grass prairie, we do have a series of basins, and Eric showed it, I guess, in the bottom section. This is not a flat site, it is a series of terraced basins, and separating those basins would be a weir. So we have an opportunity to create an element or an interesting architectural element out of those weirs. So that's the potential project amenities we've identified that could be enhanced throughout the park.
Thank you, Robbie. So these project amenities will come up a little bit later, but I want to touch on a few items that we discussed earlier about the identified stakeholders. So as discussed, we reached out to the Mill Creek Park Association and worked through our design concept with them, as well as discussing these project amenities, giving them an opportunity to provide us feedback on their thoughts on the amenities. So on the left-hand side of the screen is the list of those participants involved with the Mill Creek Park Association. And then on the right-hand side of this screen is those additional stakeholders that were identified by the Mill Creek Park Association, as well as KC Water, that would be involved in those second and third stakeholder meetings. So we have engaged with these groups, and we are receiving feedback from them. And so on the next slide, we received feedback from them on what questions to ask you as the public, how you engage the Mill Creek Park. So I just want to run through these questions real quick. This is what we're going to see later when Taylor brings up Social Pinpoint to show you all how you can provide us your feedback on the design concept as well as the amenities. So it's pretty standard questions. What your zip code and age range, when you visit the park, how many members of your group typically attend, how do you typically get to the park, so transportation being a part of that, how many times a year do you visit? I know for myself and my children, we're down at Mill Creek Park almost every other weekend. What program elements do you currently use at the park, whether it's the activity path or some of the fitness equipment throughout? And then what other parks within either the neighborhood or throughout Kansas City are you visiting, and which ones? And then what do you like about Mill Creek Park? What changes do you want to see there? And would you like to be notified about events? So this summarizes the questions that you're going to see a little bit later in Social Pinpoint, and how we'd like to get feedback from you all, as well as encourage you to share those surveys as well as the Social Pinpoint. On the next slide, you're going to see that there will be signage provided in the park with a QR code. So visitors to the park currently will be able to be routed right to Social Pinpoint, get an understanding of that project overview that we've just discussed here today, as well as have access to the public survey. So the survey will have those questions that we just went over on that previous slide, but they're also going to have access to the project amenities to allow everyone in the public to provide feedback on what they like and don't like about those amenities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Taylor and Alex to walk us through Social Pinpoint.
Thank you, Jess. All right, I'm going to go ahead and change. So I'm sharing a different screen here. So this here is just our typical smart sewer project webpage. So my colleague Alex will drop this in the chat as well. But here you can find the basic information about the project, including the project fact sheet and a little bit of the frequently asked questions related to the project. Here where you can see where you can take the feedback survey, and after the meeting, this will be changed to where it'll link here as well. When you click that link, it'll bring you to what we call our social pinpoint page. So this page has a lot of the same information on it. And if you scroll down, there's some additional frequently asked questions and some links to link you back to the Smart Sewer page. But here we have two different ways you can engage. First is the survey we've been talking about. If you take the survey, it'll pull up the survey for you and it'll walk you through all those questions we talked about. And when talking about each amenity, it'll show you that same picture again. So you kind of have that visual as you're taking it. Once you're done taking the survey, you'll just want to make sure you hit submit, and then you can close out of that and head over to our ideas wall. Now, the ideas wall is kind of a fun new engagement strategy that we're trying out here, and I'll give it a moment to load, but it gives you an opportunity to provide any ideas and talk about what you want to talk about. So we have three different ways you can comment on here. If you want to do future ideas for the park, you'd click this one, general comments, or what you like at the park. So if you click on it, it'll pull this up for you to leave your comment. If you want to leave your email, you can leave that here. And if you have an image that would help support your comment, you can do that here. Now you can see some other people have already left comments. You can like or dislike those comments and engage on them as well. So these links will be in the chat for you to participate on. I will point out that the survey and the ideas wall is set to close December 10th. So that gives you a couple weeks to engage, and we highly encourage you to engage on this, but also send it to other people, because everyone who lives, work, or play around the park has a voice in this. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it back over to Jen.
Thanks, Taylor. So our next steps are definitely encouraging you all both to engage on Social Pinpoint, share those throughout your neighborhood associations, make sure that your neighbors and friends and other park users understand that we're looking for that feedback, and we want to incorporate that into our project overall. So you guys have the link in the chat box. Please distribute that online survey. And next up, we will be pulling together all of that information, like Taylor said, in December 10th, and we're rolling that into the project. So I just want to open it up to questions at this point. But before I do, I want to thank all of those participants that were able to join us this evening. And we're open and welcome to questions.
After 20 months, do we need to remember how to unmute ourselves? No, we'd love to get some feedback and questions. Linda or Denny, yeah, thanks. No questions at this time. Appreciate your participation.
Hi, this is Laura Burkhalter from Southmoreland Neighborhood Association. Just wanted to say thank you for the presentation, and we'll be sharing it with our residents and the link so they can make sure they have an opportunity to give input.
Thanks, Laura.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Laura. Yep.
Thank you. Romalie?
I just wondered if there will be any changes to the surface of the walking path.
Jesse, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. I'm probably going to bring in Eric to talk about that. We are going to maintain the walking paths. Those will be a feature that will not be changed. The bulk of the project will be on the interior. But Eric, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so the that walking path is wonderful. It's so heavily used and so well liked. So the intent is to keep that walking path as close to the current location as we can. There will be some construction movement that's going to be pulling a lot of material out and then bringing new material in and the new construction materials for the walls and the amenities. So there's a good chance part of that trail will have to be either closed or taken out during construction. But by all means, that circular loop track is heavily used, well liked, so we definitely want to put it back when we're done. So no big changes are planned.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Great question.
I do have a question regarding maintenance issues, which have been a fairly big problem for the park in the past. And with some of your ambitious plans and ideas, how can that be assured that that will continue in the future? For example, the park started out with a very nice eco pond that is long since gone into the disappeared. So to me, these are very nice ideas. I'm not sure all of them I view as practical, but the question truly is about ongoing maintenance and upkeep.
So Leanne, let me jump in there. So as we mentioned, the green infrastructure we are putting in for the most part to clean the stormwater, hold the stormwater, and discharge it safely to the waterways, and then allow the rest of the combined sewer system to work better with fewer overflows. Because of that, the wastewater utility will fund the maintenance of everything associated with the green infrastructure. So plants, the waterways, the weirs, and everything. Just like we fund the maintenance for our pump stations and our treatment plants, the system will not work, and we will not live up to our commitments to both our ratepayers and the EPA and the Department of Justice unless we fund that maintenance. So we have a program where we are continuing to ramp up and improve that. The current park is maintained by the Parks Department. So, if there are additional amenities and things that are added above and beyond the green infrastructure, we will make sure, the project team will make sure, and whoever funds those additional amenities will also need to look at the long-term maintenance for that and how that is done. But for the green infrastructure, for the plants, we mentioned that there's an inlet that does the screening and gets the trash and debris out of there. So for every storm, our vac trucks will come out and clean those traps and make sure that gets out of there. And then we have landscape architects, long-term contracts, and staff that then do the green infrastructure maintenance. And we've been at this now for 6 or 7 years. And if you go and look at all the green infrastructure we put in as a part of the Smart Sewer program, you'll see it's maintained in good condition. But very, very good question. It's not easy, but it is something that we are planning for and funding for the long term.
What will happen to the eco pond?
Justin, Robbie, I'm not sure. We're not sure for sure on that.
Yeah, I know we discussed this with Mill Creek Park Association as they are maintaining that eco pond right now. But Eric, is the footprint of the eco pond maintained with our project footprint?
Well, what we're hearing is eco pond is kind of a mess. So we were having to spend money to avoid eco pond. It was actually some retaining walls and some other site features to try to keep eco pond in there. And actually, when we lay out our site, it's both less expensive and gives us a much better facility if we go ahead and grade eco pond out, integrate it into our facility, and it's going to be a much more maintainable system and won't have a lot of the negatives that are currently associated with the way that pond is now. So we're really looking forward to integrating that to not only save money, but improve performance and lighten the maintenance load a bit.
So as I recall from the Mill Creek Park Association meeting, it was unanimous to forego the eco pond, and we'll just see if there's any other input as we go through this, where that we want to keep a portion of it or anything. But good, thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, who just asked that question? I want to make sure I noted it properly.
Judy Kappas.
Thank you, Judy. I appreciate it.
Other questions?
Yes. Do these design features deal with the various and sundry trees and so on, and the uphill slope from on the east side of the park? What is envisioned in terms of dealing with those trees, some of which are in okay condition, others which are not so great, etc.?
So Eric or Robbie, you want to take this one, and then maybe Eric can add on with how the slopes of the actual design extents are?
Yeah, we did consider the existing tree canopy with the design, and most of what you are seeing with the layout of the tall grass prairie and the walkway that encircles it is not impacting the existing canopy at all. I don't believe there was any significant encroachment to the existing trees. Now, we may be getting close to the root zones, and we didn't run calculations on that aspect of it, but we were trying to work with what was in the park and not destroy the assets that were there.
And Eric, if you want to touch on, as we continue through preliminary design, where the extents of that are and how we might be managing the slope of the project.
Sure. So from an engineering perspective, trees are really vitally important to really hold that steep slope. When we've done geotechnical borings, bedrock is very, very shallow there. So our goal is really to preserve those trees. And in addition to just holding the slope, they also help us control some of the groundwater elevations. We've measured groundwater just 6 inches below ground on the kind of the south end of our project area. So those trees are really performing a very important function. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to plant some additional trees. Those are performing some of those engineering functions that I mentioned. But we're raising the middle of the site to give really a better park user experience, but also by picking up the bottom of the site, we can tie into those side slopes a little easier. We don't have such a huge tall slope that we potentially would have to get into and rework. So I'd say preservation is the theme for that entire east side. And you know, as we go forward, the park has made comments really wanting to improve the forestry stand there. But for our program, we're really focused on preservation and keeping that green and lush and beautiful up there.
Thank you, Eric.
And I guess additionally, I would say I understand that there's some water challenges and uncontrolled stormwater that comes down that slope and everything. And with the stormwater improvements that we have, that will be controlled and managed. So there'll be less erosion from that and less marshy areas, except where we want it to be.
Any other questions? Well, again, we highly encourage all of you to hop on Social Pinpoint. Alex provided the link in the chat box. Go ahead and get on there, complete the survey, check out those amenities, as well as work through that idea board and provide any feedback there. And please do share so we can get as much feedback as possible. All right, Matt, anything else?
You're on mute, Matt.
Yes, I am for the second time. Thank you. No, we just appreciate everyone's input tonight. Again, pass this on to your neighbors, friends. We'd like to get as much input as we can. And we appreciate your patience as this gets into construction, because it will be a challenging project during that point in time. But once it's done, I think it's going to be a pretty amazing transformation. And we're hopeful that it meets and exceeds your expectations. So with that, I'll say thank you to everyone from KC Water and the design professional team. Thanks to Parsons for the logistics on this, and everyone have a safe Thanksgiving if you're traveling, and we appreciate your help. Thanks for your input.
Thanks, Matt. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.